What is up, everybody? It is me, DevilNeverCry, and in today's video we're going to be covering Enzo Ferino, a somewhat important background character in the Devil May Cry universe that is portrayed throughout a majority of the Devil May Cry media. However, he's not seen in any of the video games, which is why some people are confused to as who exactly he is. Regardless though, we will be covering who he is and what he does in all of the media he's portrayed in, and answering the question of, is this Enzo in Devil May Cry the same Enzo we see in Bayonetta? So stick around to find out. So, who exactly is Enzo? Well, to put things simply, he is an information broker. He comes to Dante with jobs, and when the jobs are completed, he takes a small portion of the profits as a finder's fee. And his portrayals in the Devil May Cry media are somewhat consistent, but there are a few discrepancies. So, starting with the first Devil May Cry novel, he is described as one of the most well-known information brokers in the area, being short of stature, which supposedly helps in that line of business, seeing as all the bullets aimed at him seemingly whiz just over his head. Now, at this point in the first Devil May Cry novel, he's already well known as one of the best information brokers, where he frequents one of the more popular mercenary bars, Bobby's Cellar. Now, all the mercenaries frequent this bar, seeing as that's where all the middlemen go to provide jobs, and of course the middlemen take a portion of the profits when these mercenaries complete these jobs. But of course, Enzo is most well known for working with Tony Redgrave, aka Dante. That's because Dante is well known as the strongest mercenary in the bar. Of course, their relationship is amicable, though there is bickering between the two at times. You see, Dante doesn't necessarily care about the money, which kind of angers Enzo, seeing as a lot of the jobs he provides him are high paying. And that's because Dante tends to go for the unusual jobs, aka the jobs that have some sort of demonic or supernatural element to them, seeing as at this point Dante has a vendetta against these demons. Nevertheless though, Enzo sees Dante as a profitable venture, which is often reflected in the fancy expensive suits that Enzo can often be seen wearing. Enzo doesn't necessarily do much in this novel, with the introduction of Gilva, aka a mercenary on par with Dante. Enzo seems to find it hard to work with them, seeing as there are a whole lot of other middlemen who now want to work with the duo, something that angers Enzo, seeing as he used to be the only one that Dante worked with. Regardless, if you want to know more about the initial Devil May Cry novel, I have a couple of videos on it which I'll leave linked in the description below for you to check out in your own time. The only important thing to note is that by the end of the novel, Dante and Enzo are still working together, where Dante sort of semi-retires from the mercenary life and works as a private investigator from his office. Moving on to Devil May Cry Volume 2, Enzo's role in this novel is again brief. In fact, it's briefer than his involvement in the initial novel. So, sometime after the events of Malay Island, Enzo visits Dante in his office, attempting to convince him to accept this latest job offer as he is behind on his rent payments. Now, at this point, Dante of course refuses as usual, but not before Dante receives a phone call from a customer with the password. Enzo is of course flustered, but sees this as a profitable venture and offers to drive Dante to the location. Despite Enzo's ridiculously bad driving, they somehow make it to their location, which is something that Enzo immediately regrets as they are assailed upon immediately by a demon. Of course, Enzo being a human is absolutely powerless and is mere inches away from dying, but not before Dante comes in to save the day. Enzo is of course absolutely mortified, but he agrees to drive Dante back to the office, and that ends his involvement in Devil May Cry Volume 2. Moving on to the Devil May Cry 3 manga, it is important to note that there are a few discrepancies between the manga and the novels, seeing as they both attempt to cover the same period of time. Of course, One of them was penned in the Kamiya era and the other was penned in the Itsuno era, so of course there will be differences in the way they wanted the stories to go. This wasn't an issue in the past, seeing as only the manga was seen as canon, but due to Devil May Cry 5 and its novel Before the Nightmare canonizing some of the initial novel, it gets kind of hard to tell what is canon to the story and what isn't. Nevertheless though, let's move on to Enzo's portrayal. The fact that we see Enzo for the first time in the manga in a strip club should tell you all about the character. He is portrayed as younger than he is in the novels, but he's still the very same. He's short, he's chubby, and he doesn't have the expensive tailored suits at this point, opting for a flat cap and a long overcoat. Nevertheless though, it's been about 4 months since Enzo brought Dante a job, so of course when Enzo came calling, Dante immediately followed up. He busts into the strip club where Enzo was situated, saving him from being murdered by a bunch of pride demons, aka these dudes from Devil May Cry 3. Dante of course outright refuses, but then Enzo threatens to throw him out of his new office, of course forcing Dante to take on this job. After the job is completed, Dante storms back to Enzo and almost puts a bullet through his skull, as the client for this job was a demon. Enzo promises to do a thorough background check on his clients in the future, which saves Enzo's life as Dante storms off. Some time passes, and Enzo finds Dante at a bar where he begs and pleads with him to take on this new job, as if he doesn't, Enzo thinks he'll be the one that ends up dead due to the client's punishment. Dante of course outright refuses, stating that he has better things to do. Enzo ends up staying at the bar for a few drinks, complaining about Dante to the barkeep, which forces Dante to peek in through a random window, telling Enzo to clean up his office and that he'll be back in time to save Enzo from this mysterious client. Enzo of course doesn't heed Dante's words and stays at the bar, continuing to drink until he's in a drunken state. The barkeep ends up throwing Enzo out of the bar, stating that he feels he should close up early, seeing as the moon is as red as blood and his instincts are telling him to close up and go home. Enzo doesn't really know what's going on as he's drunk and waddles off. And that is the last time we see Enzo in the DMC3 manga. We're unsure if Dante completed his other job in time to get back and save Enzo, so his fate is left as inconclusive, and this is primarily attributed to the fact that the manga is unfinished. There were 3 volumes planned and only 2 of them were fully published, meaning that the end of this tale is shrouded in complete mystery. But let's move on. We also end up hearing of Enzo Ferino in the Devil May Cry Drama CD Volume 1. For chronological reference, this drama CD takes place in between Devil May Cry and Devil May Cry the Animated Series. The story begins immediately after Devil May Cry 1, aka the Malay Island incident, where Trish ends up joining Dante's shop and becomes acquainted with Enzo. This is important to note because Enzo at this point doesn't even believe in demons. I should also probably mention the fact that Morrison is now Dante's main information broker, with Enzo only coming in from time to time. Nevertheless, the story begins with Enzo coming to Dante with a new job, subsequently playing a game of poker to see if Dante would take the job or not. Dante of course loses and is forced to go along with Trish to the location of said job. They end up fighting some demons. Enzo attempts to conceal a devil arm he finds on site, and the pair subsequently let Enzo go, but not before Trish tails Enzo because she knows that that gun he was concealing was a creation of Machiavelli. If you don't know who Machiavelli is, I also have a video on him, so check the description for that. Regardless, getting back to the story, it turns out that the gun possesses Enzo, forcing Dante to destroy the gun and Enzo's hand in the process. It is this traumatic incident that ends up making Enzo believe in the existence of demons. Due to the events of the drama CD, Enzo ends up owning a Devil Arms pawnshop which houses a plethora of Dante's weapons. Of course, the team devise a plan to get them back, which results in Lady pretending to be possessed and tearing up the shop. Dante comes in at the nick of time, stating that if he wants Dante to save the shop, Enzo would have to give Dante all of the devil arms back. Of course, Enzo reluctantly agrees and Dante saves the day, but there was another reason for this plan. There was a demon that went around possessing devil arms, which Dante wanted to get rid of. Of course, the plan works perfectly as the demon turns up in the nick of time after Dante saves everybody. Of course, the demon gets cocky, thinking that it would be easy, and Dante defeats him in one fell swoop. And that is the last we hear of Enzo in the Devil May Cry series. But before we wrap up, I want to get back to the question that I posed at the beginning of this video, and that is the Enzo we see in Devil May Cry the same Enzo we see in Bayonetta? And the answer is kind of yes and no. So of course, the original Devil May Cry and Bayonetta were penned and created by Hideki Kamiya, so of course there is some sort of connection between the two, and that has actually been confirmed by one of the official pieces of art we see in a Bayonetta art book, where we see Dante and Enzo sitting at the gates of hell playing poker. Of course, Dante is losing, as Enzo pretty much has Dante's clothes, Alistair, and Ebony and Ivory. In the background, you can see Bayonetta just chilling at the bar talking to Rodan, and there is essentially your connection. There are a few other things in Bayonetta that sort of confirm the connection, but they don't really have much to do with Enzo, and they're probably for another video. But the reason that I say no is because everything post Devil May Cry 1 essentially has nothing to do with Bayonetta. As you can see in the drama CD, Enzo ends up losing an arm, which is something we don't see at all in Bayonetta, either 1 or 2. Not only that, but there are a plethora of factors that discredit Itsuno's Devil May Cry being set in the same universe as Bayonetta. So there you have it. Kamiya's Devil May Cry and Bayonetta? Yeah, sure, that's plausible, but Itsuno's Devil May Cry and Bayonetta? Yeah, not a chance. And that's gonna wrap up this video. Of course, if you liked today's video, be sure to show some support and leave a like, and of course, subscribe to stay up to date on all things Devil May Cry. It has been me, DevilNeverCry. I would like to thank all of you for watching, and as always, I'll see you next video.